Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. On the planet Zelara, towering columns of emerald light erupted from the ground like ghostly flames, illuminating a desert of shimmering sand. A survey ship from Earth touched down, its engines roaring before falling silent, giving way to the howling wind that swept through the glowing pillars. Ethan Cole, a geologist with calloused hands and piercing eyes, stepped out from the ship's hatch. His protective suit crinkled as he moved, his breath forming faint clouds in the frigid air. He wasn't here for the scenery. He was here for the Zethra, the enigmatic predators of this world, their slender bodies translucent like glass, adorned with glowing spines along their backs. Barely minutes after landing, Ethan spotted one atop a dune. It was tall, graceful, its skin shimmering from pearlescent white to deep violet, reflecting the green glow of the columns. Its spines vibrated, emitting a low hum like a broken bell, its jet-black eyes locking onto him. "Easy now," Ethan muttered, raising a hand, palm outward. "Don't do anything stupid." But the Zethra lunged, swift as lightning, its spines flaring red as if to pierce him through. "Stop!" he shouted, his voice echoing with a strange, commanding power. The Zethra froze midair, trembling, its eyes blinking rapidly, its spines dimming to a soft gold. "Back off," he ordered, his tone low and firm. It retreated to the dune, coiling itself, its gaze still fixed on him. Footsteps crunched behind him. Ethan turned to see an alien woman emerge from the shadow of a pillar. She stood taller than him, her pearlescent skin shimmering with faint blue veins of light. Her compound eyes glinted with fury beneath a sleek, lightweight armor that hugged her form, reflecting the eerie glow. "Who are you to dare touch my Zethra?" Her voice was clear but icy. "Ethan Cole," he replied, keeping his cool despite the adrenaline surging within. "I didn't touch it. It just, listen to me." She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "I am Syris of the Kaelith lineage, the only ones the Zethra obey." "You lie." She raised a hand, her skin flaring with light. "Zethra, come," she commanded, her tone dripping with authority. But the Zethra didn't budge, its gem-like eyes still trained on Ethan, as if Syris didn't exist. Syris recoiled, her skin flashing crimson. "Impossible," she whispered. "Only Kaelith blood can command them." Ethan shrugged, though his own mind churned with confusion. "Maybe it doesn't care for that rule." Syris drew a slender rod from her belt, its tip igniting with a violet glow. "If you've done something to it, you'll pay," she said, her voice cold as ice. But the Zethra leapt up, planting itself between them, its spines ringing out a high-pitched chime like shattering glass. Syris froze, her hand trembling, the violet light fading. "What are you?" she asked, her tone a mix of awe and suspicion. Ethan glanced at the Zethra, feeling a vibration deep within him grow stronger. "Just an engineer from Earth," he said, though even he was starting to doubt it. "But it seems this thing and I have an understanding you don't get." Ethan stood firm, his heavy boots sinking into the sand, the light from the columns casting sharp shadows across his rugged face. The Zethra remained coiled on the dune, its spines humming softly as if awaiting his next word. His heart pounded, not just from the near miss, but from something awakening inside him. Syris studied him, her compound eyes glinting like polished jewels, her skin flickering between red and blue. "You don't understand," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "The Zethra are the soul of Kaelith. If you can command one, you threaten my entire world." Ethan took a deep breath, the cold air stinging his lungs. "I'm not here to threaten anyone," he said, his voice steady but resolute. "I just want to understand." Syris tilted her head, her skin softening to a pale green. "Understand?" she echoed, as if the word were alien to her. "You think you can comprehend the Zethra human?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He looked at the Zethra, that strange vibration within him pulsing like an invisible heartbeat, linking him to the creature. "Maybe not," he said at last. "But it understands me." Syris stepped closer, just a few feet away, her rod still faintly glowing. "You don't know what you've just done," she said, her voice now edged with warning. If the Kaelith Council hears of this, they'll hunt you down. Ethan shrugged again, a calm gesture masking the tension coiling inside. They'll have to work for it. The Zethra let out a low, almost pleased hum, and a warmth spread through Ethan's chest. Syris stared at him, then at the Zethra, her expression unreadable. You're not afraid? She asked. Ethan gave a faint smile, though his pulse still raced. I've seen scarier things than a glowing beast. The wind howled across the desert, kicking up sand around them. Syris stood still, her skin flickering as if wrestling with some inner conflict. You're not the first to challenge Kaelith, she said, her voice low. But you're the first to make a Zethra betray me. Ethan shook his head. It didn't betray you. It chose. Syris gripped her rod tighter, the violet light flaring briefly, but she didn't strike. The Zethra raised its head, its spines humming warily, its eyes darting between them. Chose? Syris repeated, her voice faltering. Zethra don't choose. They obey. Ethan stepped forward, his voice low but firm. Maybe it's time you rethink that. The wind grew fiercer, whipping sand into small whirlwinds around them, as if to swallow them whole. Syris clutched her rod, the violet light flickering weakly, then turned away, gesturing for Ethan to follow. If you want to survive tonight, don't stand here defying me, she said, her tone cold but tinged with urgency. Ethan glanced at the Zethra, now called Lyrra in his mind, and nodded, following her across the desert. They climbed over towering dunes, the glow of the columns fading behind them, until Syris led him to a narrow mountain crevice. A tunnel opened before them, deep and dark, with glowing stones hanging from the ceiling like fallen stars. This place is safe, for now, Syris whispered, her skin dimming as they stepped into the shadows. 3 days after the encounter beneath Zelara's fiery sky, Ethan and Syris sat across from each other in a deep cavern, where glowing stones dangled from the ceiling, casting a soft green light over the rugged walls. A small pool of water lay between them, its surface still and reflective, shimmering with threads of light that danced in the darkness. The Zethra, now named Lyrra by Ethan, lay coiled beside him, its slender body glinting like glass, its spines humming faintly, a low song resonating in the quiet space. Ethan ran his hand over Lyrra's translucent skin, feeling its strange coolness, like touching a stone buried for centuries. Syris sat opposite, her compound eyes fixed on him with a mix of curiosity and wariness. The initial hostility had faded, but the air between them remained taut as a bowstring. I raised Lyrra from a mere spark of life, she said, her voice slow and deep, like water over stone. Zethra only obey Kaelith, through something called the soul mark, a bond in our blood. But you, she paused, her skin flickering from red to pale green. You bear no such mark. Ethan looked up, his hands still on Lyrra. Maybe you're wrong about what makes that bond, he said, his tone steady with the confidence of a man who'd spent a decade studying alien worlds. I don't have your blood or tech, but I know how things work, the pulse of the earth, the breath of stone, the life hidden in what seems dead. Maybe Lyrra senses that. Syris fell silent, her skin softening to a green as gentle as the pool before them. She studied him, then Lyrra, her compound eyes glinting as if searching for answers. After a moment she spoke, her voice a whisper echoing off the cavern walls. There's an ancient Kaelith legend of the Callers, beings from ages past, unbound by species, who taught us to merge with the Zethra. They didn't need blood or marks. They needed— She hesitated, as if the next word was too heavy to speak. Empathy. Ethan's heart quickened, a shiver running down his spine. And you think I'm one of them? He asked, his voice rough with curiosity and doubt. Syris didn't answer immediately. She stood, her tall frame casting a shadow against the stone, the faint glow of the stones illuminating her sleek armor in ghostly patterns. I don't know, she said, her tone tinged with unease. But if you can truly command a Zethra, all of Zelara will either want to claim you, or destroy you. Lyrra lifted its head, its black gemstone eyes flashing, as if agreeing with her warning. Ethan gave a faint smile, though a chill crept into his chest. Then they'd better run faster than me, he said, his voice light but unyielding. The cavern trembled faintly, the glowing stones swaying overhead, casting shifting shadows on the walls. A strange sound, like the whispers of countless voices blending together, rose from the pool. Ethan leaned over, peering into the still water. A hazy figure emerged, a towering creature, its form indistinct, with spines blazing like Lyrra's, standing resolute amid the shimmering waves. A cold jolt ran through him, not from the air, but from something deep in his mind. "Do you see that?" he asked, his voice low and urgent. Syris followed his gaze, her skin paling to a ghostly gray. "No," she replied, her voice trembling. "But I feel the cold." The whisper ceased, but the cavern shook harder, the stones clinking together like tiny bells. Syris gripped her rod, its violet light flaring weakly. "They're here," she said, her voice sharp as a blade. Ethan rose, placing a hand on Lyrra's head, the vibration between them stronger than ever. "Who?" he asked, though he already suspected. "The Kaelith Council," Syris answered, her eyes fixed on the ceiling as if she could see through the stone. "They won't tolerate a human controlling a Zethra." The shrill alarm of Ethan's ship, still parked in the desert, pierced through the thick rock, urgent and deafening. Lyrra roared, a deep, fierce sound, its spines igniting like red flames, bathing the cavern in light for a fleeting moment. Adrenaline surged through Ethan, but it wasn't fear, it was rage. "We'll show them just how wrong they are to underestimate a human," he declared, his voice a battle cry, each word sharp and unyielding. Syris met his gaze, her compound eyes wavering between doubt and something akin to resolve. She stepped closer, her skin flickering as if wrestling within. "You don't know what you started," she whispered, her voice nearly drowned by Lyrra's growl. But she didn't turn away. She gripped her rod tighter, its violet light blazing anew, and followed him out of the cavern. Outside, Zelara's sky burned with the glow of Kaelith warships, their engines roaring like falling meteors. Lyrra stood beside Ethan, its spines ablaze, ready to face whatever came. Ethan felt his own pulse sync with Lyrra's hum, a bond he couldn't explain but knew would change everything. Outside the cavern, Zelara's sky blazed with the light of Kaelith warships, their engines thundering across the shimmering desert. A squad of soldiers in glossy black armor descended from the ships, plasma weapons glowing in their hands, their heavy boots crunching the sand with menace. The emerald pillars cast cold, reflective streaks across their gear. Syris reacted instantly, yanking Ethan behind a massive column, her body low to the ground, her skin pulsing with alert flickers. "They won't kill you yet," she whispered, her voice sharp but hushed. "They want to study you." Ethan glanced at Lyrra, standing beside him, its spines humming faintly, its black eyes gleaming in the shadows. The vibration within him surged, a silent rhythm tying him to the creature. "I'm no lab rat," he snapped, his voice hard as stone. Turning to Lyrra, he commanded, "Lyrra, run!" The Zethra bolted, swift as a gale, its slender form slicing through the air, kicking up a blinding curtain of sand. Ethan and Syris sprinted after it, plasma blasts erupting behind them, each shot a roaring tear in the silence. They darted into a narrow maze of glowing pillars, ancient towers rising like forgotten sentinels. Sand clung to Syris's sleek armor, the pillars' light painting her as a shimmering phantom. Ethan ran beside her, his breath ragged, his boots pounding the sand with heavy thuds. A plasma bolt struck a nearby pillar, exploding in a deafening crack, shards of radiant debris raining down like fiery tears. Ethan stumbled, crashing into the sand, his hands digging in to keep from being buried. But Lyrra spun back in an instant, its translucent body shielding him from the jagged fragments. He felt its weight, the odd warmth of its glowing spines brushing close. Syris lunged forward, hauling him up, her breath sharp, her skin flaring red. "It protected you," she said, her voice thick with astonishment, her compound eyes searching his face as if uncovering a secret. "Zethra don't do that unless—" She trailed off, her gaze conflicted, torn between truth and old beliefs. They pressed on, their feet slipping on the shifting sand, reaching a deep canyon where the dunes flowed like a raging river, hissing with strange whispers. The wind screamed, drowning their footsteps, but a dark shape loomed overhead, a small Kaelith ship, its engine snarling, dropping metallic cables like a spider's web primed to ensnare. "They're trying to trap us!" Ethan yelled, his voice cutting through the gale, his heart hammering. Syris shoved him aside, the force nearly toppling him again. She raised her rod, its violet light blazing. "I'll hold them off," she said, her tone steel-hard, her compound eyes flashing resolve. "Go!" Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but Lyrra roared, its fierce cry echoing through the canyon. The Zethra charged the soldiers, its spines a radiant blur, slashing through the air with lethal grace, scattering their ranks. Shouts mingled with the crack of plasma fire. Syris turned to Ethan, her skin ablaze, shifting from green to red like a living flame. "I'm not betraying you," she said, her voice low but firm, a vow etched in her words. "But I have to protect Lyrra." Ethan nodded, no words needed. Together they plunged into the rushing sand, sliding deep into Zelara's underbelly, leaving the soldiers' cries behind. The sand swept them through a tight tunnel, its walls glinting with tiny glowing creatures that hissed like insects as they passed. Ethan brushed one with his hand, his fingers trembling as the vibration flared within him, stronger and clearer than ever. "They know me," he whispered, his voice lost in the dark, his eyes wide with awe. Syris glanced at him, her skin flickering, her compound eyes glinting with an emotion he couldn't name. "You're not normal, Ethan Cole," she said, her tone dropping, laced with both doubt and a hint of respect. The sand flows slowed, depositing them onto cold stone, breathless and battered. Lyrra stood by Ethan, its spines humming weakly, as if exhausted from the escape. Ethan felt his pulse merge with Lyrra's rhythm, a bond too deep to fathom. Syris rose, sand cascading from her armor, her skin dimming to a soft green. "They won't stop," she said, her voice weary. "The Kaelith Council doesn't forgive defiance." Ethan pushed himself up, his legs shaky but his resolve unshaken. "Then we'll outpace them," he said, his voice steady, his eyes locked on Lyrra. The Zethra raised its head, its gemstone eyes flashing in response. Syris studied him, then the darkness ahead, her rod glowing faintly. "You don't know who you're facing," she murmured, but she stood anyway, ready to move on. The last rush of sand slowed, dropping Ethan and Syris onto the cold stone floor of a vast underground cavern beneath Zelara. The walls glimmered with thousands of glowing crystals, each a tiny star trapped in rock, bathing the space in soft hues of green and purple. Ethan stood, gasping for breath, sand spilling from his torn suit and clinging to his hands like dust motes of light. Syris rose beside him, her skin flickering faintly, shifting from red to pale green as she scanned the chamber. Lyrra coiled near Ethan, its slender form trembling with alertness, its glowing spines pulsing like small flames in the dark. "Where are we?" Ethan asked, his voice hoarse from exhaustion, his eyes tracing the crystalline glow for answers. Syris inhaled deeply, her skin steadying. "The crystal vault," she replied, her tone low and deliberate. "Where Zethra are born. Kaelith forbid entry to all but the elders." Ethan reached out, brushing a crystal on the wall, his fingers trembling as a surge of vibration jolted through him, like electricity straight to his mind. "I feel it," he said, his voice quivering, eyes alight with wonder. "Like Lyrra is speaking to me." Syris approached a wall etched with strange runes, their flowing lines frozen in stone like captured water. The crystal's light danced across them, making the symbols shimmer as if alive. She pointed, her voice dropping to a whisper. "This tells of the callers," she said, her eyes fixed on the carvings as if they could recount the tale themselves. "They came from the stars, changed us and the Zethra, then vanished." Ethan tilted his head, his translator humming as it deciphered the runes into words. "They left something called the Echo Mark," he said, his voice low but clear, eyes widening as the meaning sank in. "Not in blood, but in the mind." Syris shook her head, her skin flaring briefly from green to faint red. "Impossible," she countered, her tone thick with ingrained doubt. Only Kaelith hold that right. The soul mark is ours. A rasping voice cut through the silence, shattering the stillness. You're wrong, Syris. A figure emerged from the shadows, the crystal's light revealing an aged Kaelith. His gray skin was weathered, etched with wrinkles like eroded stone, his cloudy eyes sharp despite their haze. I am Koran, keeper of the crystal vault, he said, his voice a dry wind through a crevice, heavy with time. This human bears the echo mark, something Kaelith lost long ago. Syris stepped back, her skin paling to near white. Impossible! She exclaimed, her voice cracking with shock. The council says the echo mark is a myth. Koran chuckled, a harsh sound echoing in the cavern. The council says much to cling to power, he replied, his cloudy gaze piercing her. But the Zethra know the truth. Lyrra edged closer to Ethan, its spines flaring brilliant violet red, as if affirming Koran's words. Ethan felt the vibration from Lyrra intensify, syncing with his own heartbeat. Koran shuffled to the cavern's center, pointing to a massive crystal towering over them both, its light pulsing like a heartbeat, casting faint waves of radiance. This is the memory core, he said, his voice dropping with reverence. It holds the caller's memories. Ethan stepped forward, drawn to the pulsing light. He touched its icy surface, and a surge of energy ripped through him, nearly knocking him back. Visions flooded his mind, a towering, ethereal figure with spines blazing like Lyrra's, standing amid a throng of Zethra. Its deep eyes met his across millennia, wordless but profound, calling to him through time. They're like me, he whispered, his voice faltering, hands still pressed to the crystal, fingers trembling with the strange sensation. Syris edged closer, her eyes wide with astonishment. What do you see? She asked, her voice low and urgent, her skin flickering with her turmoil. Ethan shook his head, struggling to order the chaotic images. I'm not sure, he said, his voice trailing off, eyes locked on the crystal. But I feel them, like they're part of me. Lyrra drew nearer, its spines humming softly in agreement. Koran nodded, a spark flashing in his cloudy eyes. The echo mark isn't blood, he said, his tone slow but certain. It's connection, left by the callers for those who understand the Zethra. Syris stared at Koran, then Ethan, her skin pulsing wildly. If this is true, she said, her voice trembling, then everything I know about Kaelith is a lie. Koran didn't reply, only gazed at the memory core, its light bathing his scarred face in a silent affirmation. A low hum rumbled from the distance, at first like wine through stone, then growing sharper, carrying the scent of metal and fire. Ethan lifted his head, hands still on the memory core, the vibration within him wavering as if disrupted. What's that? He asked, his voice low, eyes sweeping the darkness. Koran tilted his head, his cloudy eyes narrowing as if recognizing the sound. They're here sooner than I thought, he said, his rasping voice tight, hand clutching his cloak. Syris sprang up, her skin flaring red, her rod igniting with alert light. The council, she whispered, her gaze piercing the ceiling as if to see through the stone. The roar of engines grew clear, snarling like a pack of predators closing in. The engine's roar thundered from afar, piercing the crystal vault's thick stone, shaking the chamber. The glowing crystals overhead flickered wildly, as if warning of the encroaching danger. Kaelith's soldiers had found the entrance. Koran reacted instantly, his cloudy eyes flashing urgency. Hurry! He barked, his voice hoarse, leading Ethan and Syris through a hidden tunnel behind a crystal wall. The tunnel's glowing stones cast faint green-purple light on his scarred face. The council fears the echo mark, he said, his breath labored as he moved. If a human holds it, they lose their grip on the Zethra. Ethan ran close behind, his hand brushing Lyrra's back, the vibration from the Zethra a second heartbeat in his chest. He turned to Syris, his gaze steady through the gloom. What will you do? He asked, his voice low but sharp. Syris hesitated, her skin pulsing between pale green and fiery red, a storm raging within. After a moment, she replied, her tone firm. I'm Kaelith. But I'm not blind to the truth. They raced through the narrow passage, Lyrra leading with swift, sure steps, its spines humming warily. The tunnel opened to a massive stone door, its surface carved with ancient, flowing runes like petrified rivers. Koran pressed his hand to it, whispering something, and the door groaned open, stone grinding on stone with a dry screech. But it wasn't the escape they'd hoped for. A squad of Kaelith soldiers waited beyond, their black armor glinting under the crystal light, plasma weapons glowing with deadly blue. At their head stood a towering warrior, his skin blazing like molten metal, his compound eyes cold and unyielding. "Syris," he said, his voice ice cold, devoid of warmth. Syris recoiled, her skin flaring red. "Tarek, my brother," she whispered, her voice breaking with shock. Tarek raised his plasma weapon, its blue glow illuminating his stern face, accentuating his sharp features. "The Council demands you and this human," he said, his tone flat but menacing. "The Zethra are ours." Ethan stepped forward, his legs trembling from the chase but his resolve ironclad. "Lyrra belongs to no one," he growled, his voice steel, locking eyes with Tarek. He turned to Lyrra, commanding sharply, "Lyrra, attack!" The Zethra lunged, its slender form a blur, its spines blazing violet red, sharp as blades. The soldiers scrambled, shouts erupting as Lyrra tore through their ranks, its spines slicing armor like paper. But Tarek didn't flinch. He fired, a blue plasma bolt striking Ethan's shoulder. Ethan crumpled, pain exploding like fire, blood soaking through his suit, staining the sand red beneath him. His scream was drowned by Lyra's roar, but he caught Syris's voice, sharp and panicked. "You don't get to die!" She rushed to him, dragging him up, her hands shaking as they touched his blood. They ducked into a narrow crevice in the rock, Lyrra shielding them from behind, its spines flaring as if ready to strike again. Blood dripped through Ethan's fingers, pooling on the stone in dark red streaks, but he gripped Syris's hand, his breath ragged. "Why save me?" he asked, his voice faint but his eyes still burning. Syris met his gaze, her compound eyes misty, her skin softening to pale green. "Because I'm starting to believe you're a caller," she said, her voice trembling, as if admitting a truth she feared. Ethan gritted his teeth, pain blurring his vision, but he focused. His hand brushed a small glowing stone in the crevice, humming as his fingers grazed it. "It's like the memory core," he whispered, lifting it to his eyes. Instantly, visions flared, the callers, tall and ethereal, standing with Zethra, battling unseen foes in a fierce war. Their spines blazed, their eyes resolute, warriors unbroken. "They didn't just teach," he said, his voice fading with awe. "They fought." Syris stared at him, her skin flickering, her eyes complex as she weighed all she'd believed. "You think you're a warrior?" she asked, her voice low but edged with challenge. Ethan gave a weak smile, pain forcing him to clench his teeth, blood still seeping through his fingers. "I don't know," he rasped, his breath uneven. "But I won't give up." Lyrra raised its head, its spines humming softly in agreement, its gemstone eyes fixed on him with wordless loyalty. The soldier's footsteps echoed closer, but in that tight crevice, Ethan felt a strange strength rising, not from his weakening body, but from the stone in his hand, and from Lyrra. Syris gripped his hand tighter, her skin's light blending with the stone's glow. "We have to survive," she said, her voice now unwavering. "To prove them wrong." They hid in the tight crevice, the air thick with damp sand and cold stone. The soldier's footsteps echoed in the distance, each thud a relentless drumbeat of pursuit. Ethan clutched his shoulder, hot blood seeping through his fingers, staining his suit in dark patches. Pain stabbed with every breath, but his eyes burned with defiance, unwavering in the dim light. "I won't let them take Lyrra," he said, his voice rough but resolute, a fire no wound could extinguish. Syris knelt beside him, her skin flickering faintly, shifting from red to pale green. She tore a strip from her lightweight armor, binding his wound with swift, gentle hands. "You're stubborn as a Zethra," she said, her tone softening for the first time, a hint of warmth breaking through the cold. Lyrra pressed close, its slender form coiled, its spines humming with unease, a low sigh in the stillness. Ethan touched its translucent skin, the vibration a shared pulse between them, strong and clear. "We've got to get out," he rasped, pain roughening his voice, but his gaze stayed on Lyrra. The crevice's darkness split as a towering figure blocked the entrance, snuffing out the faint crystal glow. Tarek stood there, his metallic skin blazing like forged steel, his compound eyes cold and unyielding. "Syris, hand over the human," he said, his voice icy, mechanical in its lack of emotion. "I'll spare you." Syris rose, gripping her rod, its violet light flaring brilliantly, casting her face in defiant shadow. "You don't understand, Tarek," she replied, her voice firm, her skin blazing red. "The Council's wrong." Tarek advanced, each heavy step ringing like a hammer on stone. His plasma weapon's blue light illuminated his stern features, sharpening his edges. "You'd choose an outsider over family?" he asked, his tone dropping with contempt. Syris shook her head, her compound eyes glinting with resolve. "I choose what's right," she said, each word a pledge. Lyrra roared suddenly, its fierce cry echoing in the crevice, its spines igniting like violet-red flames. But Tarek didn't hesitate. He fired, a blazing blue plasma net snapping through the air, ensnaring Lyrra in a web it couldn't break. The Zethra thrashed, its spines flaring wildly, but their light dimmed under the net's power. Ethan lunged forward, ignoring the pain in his shoulder, his hands reaching for Lyrra. Tarek's boots slammed into his chest, the brutal force hurling him back, his head cracking against stone with a dull thud. "You're not worthy of a Zethra," Tarek said, his voice frigid, his gaze a predator's over fallen prey. He seized the plasma net, dragging Lyrra away, its spines fading into the dark, leaving only a faint, pained hiss. Syris screamed, charging Tarek, her rod swinging with blazing violet light. He shoved her down, the force sliding her across the stone, her hands scrambling to hold herself up. "I'll take you both back," Tarek said, his voice triumphant, then vanished into the shadows with Lyrra, his heavy steps fading. Ethan clenched his teeth, pain blurring his sight, but he grabbed Syris's hand, pulling her up. Blood dripped onto the stone, but his voice trembled with resolve. "We'll save it," he said, each word carved from iron will. Syris met his eyes, tears glistening in her compound gaze, her skin dimming to a faint green. "Why don't you give up?" she asked, her voice small, tinged with awe and despair. Ethan gave a faint, pained smile, his face pale from blood loss, his breath ragged. "Because I feel it, like it's part of me," he said, his hand resting on the stone as if seeking Lyrra's echo. The emptiness of its absence gnawed at him, but a fire flared within, not rage, but fierce loyalty. Syris knelt beside him, her skin flickering with her chaotic emotions. She placed a hand on his shoulder, where blood still seeped through the makeshift bandage, and squeezed lightly. "You're unlike any human I've seen," she said, her voice carrying a quiet respect. Ethan looked up, his vision hazy but his eyes fierce. "And you're not like any Kaelith I imagined," he replied, his tone rough but sincere. They sat in the crevice, the soldiers' steps fading, danger still looming like the dark around them. Ethan took a deep breath, forcing himself up despite trembling legs. "We have to find Lyrra," he said, his voice growing stronger, as if pain were a mere hurdle to his will. The sound of Tarek and his squad receded, drowned by the clatter of loose stones tumbling in the crevice. Ethan braced against the rock, breathing heavily, blood still oozing through his bandage. Syris crouched beside him, her eyes scanning the now empty entrance, her compound gaze alert. "They'll be back," she whispered, her voice low but urgent, her grip tightening on her rod. She helped him stand, her skin flickering faintly as they slipped deeper into the rock's shadows. Another narrow gap opened, leading to a darker cavern where crystal light dwindled to mere flickers. "Here," Syris said, her tone softening, guiding him into the thick darkness that cloaked them from the hunt. They slipped into a deeper, darker cavern beneath Zelara, where the glow of crystals faded to faint flickers, like candles on the verge of dying. The shadows loomed heavy, accentuating Syris's sand-streaked face as the dim light traced her sharp features. She knelt beside Ethan, holding a small healing crystal from the vault, its green glow vivid yet gentle. She pressed it to his shoulder wound, where blood had soaked his suit, and its light spread, easing the fiery pain. Ethan drew a sharp breath, the crystal's coolness seeping into his skin, dulling the burn. Syris looked up, her compound eyes glinting, her skin faintly pulsing. "Tarek will take Lyrra to the Kaelith stronghold," she said, her voice low and burdened, as if carrying the weight of truth. "They'll dissect it for the echo mark." Ethan gripped the small stone he'd found in the crevice, its light pulsing like a weak heartbeat, steady despite his frailty. "I won't let that happen," he said, his voice firm, eyes blazing though his body wavered from blood loss. The darkness shifted as a figure emerged from a corner, footsteps rasping on stone. Koran stepped into view, his cloudy eyes sparking in the faint crystal glow. Behind him followed a group of Kaelith in tattered cloaks, their gray, scarred skin marked by time and exile, their gazes fixed on Ethan with curiosity and reverence. "We are the exiles," Koran said, his voice a dry gust through stone, heavy with years of rejection. "Banished by the Council for believing in the Callers, for believing the Echo Mark is more than myth." He approached Ethan, the crystal light illuminating his scarred face, deepening its crevices. "The Council tried to recreate the Echo Mark," he continued, his tone dropping, "but failed. They thought only Kaelith blood could bond with Zethra. But you—" He paused, his cloudy eyes boring into Ethan. "You proved them wrong." A young Kaelith stepped forward, smaller than the rest, her skin faintly shimmering like dim moonlight. "I'm Rinna," she said, her voice soft but clear, her pure eyes meeting Ethan's. "I feel a vibration from you, like the Zethra." Ethan blinked, tilting his head, still clutching the stone. "You have the Echo Mark too?" he asked, his voice rough with fatigue but alive with curiosity. Rinna nodded, her skin flickering in response. "But weaker," she said, her voice quieting. "You're the key, what we've waited for." Ethan felt a strange warmth bloom in his chest, not from the stone, but from the realization he wasn't alone in this fight. Syris watched him, her skin pulsing, her compound eyes glinting with an emotion she couldn't name. "You're not alone," she said, her voice low, carrying rare sincerity. She touched his arm, her skin's light merging with the stone's glow, a faint halo in the dark. Koran stepped forward, pulling a small crystal map from his cloak, its surface gleaming as if carved from the vault stones. He set it on the floor, its light bathing his scarred face in stark relief. "There's a secret tunnel to the Kaelith stronghold," he said, his voice slow but certain, his bony finger tracing a faint line on the map. "But it's dangerous, guarded and trapped." Ethan studied the map, the stone in his hand pulsing in sync with his resolve. "I'm ready," he said, his voice stronger, though his body ached. He stood, bracing against the stone, his eyes fierce as they met Koran's and the exiles. "Lyrra is waiting." Syris rose beside him, her hand gripping his, her skin's light blending with the stone's, a brighter glow piercing the dark. "So am I," she said, her voice unwavering, doubt gone. She looked at Ethan, then Rinna and Koran, her eyes shining with newfound trust. "If you're truly a caller," she said, her tone low but clear, "I'll follow you, not for the Council, but for the truth." Rinna stepped closer, her faint glow flickering in agreement. "We all will," she said, her voice soft but firm, her gaze on Ethan like he was a guiding flame. Koran nodded, folding the map away, its light dimming as he tucked it into his cloak. "The stronghold isn't just a fortress," he said, his rasping voice a warning. "It's the heart of Kaelith power, and they'll do anything to defend it." Ethan tightened his grip on the stone, its vibration a reminder of Lyrra, of the pulse he'd lost when Tarek took it away. "They can try," he said, his voice a vow, eyes blazing in the dark. "But I won't let them win." Syris gave a faint smile, the first hint of warmth breaking through, and the exiles stood ready behind Koran, their skins faint glow like small fires in the night. They advanced through the secret tunnel, the stone walls trembling with the hum of machinery from the Kaelith stronghold above, each vibration like the heartbeat of a colossal beast. Ethan led the way, the small stone in his hand blazing with violet light, its glow casting his determined face in sharp relief. The tunnel was narrow and damp, thick with the scent of metal and scorched sand, but he didn't falter. Syris followed close behind, her rod faintly glowing, her skin pulsing with wary flickers. The exiles, led by Koran and Rinna, moved silently, their makeshift weapons glinting under the dim crystal light along the walls. The passage opened into a vast storage chamber, a cold expanse reeking of ozone and heated steel. At its center, Lyrra lay trapped in a plasma cage, blue tendrils of energy coiling around its slender form. The Zethra spines flickered weakly, like a dying fire, its black gemstone eyes meeting Ethan's with desperate recognition. "Lyrra!" Ethan shouted, his voice echoing through the chamber, charging forward without hesitation. Lyrra lifted its head, its eyes flashing faintly, a spark of hope amid its exhaustion. Syris dashed after him, raising her rod high. Its violet light flared brilliantly, slicing through the air like a blade. She struck the plasma cage, violet clashing with blue in a piercing screech, and the cage shattered into dissipating energy fragments. Lyrra collapsed, its legs trembling, but the stronghold's alarms blared instantly, a shrill wail like a wounded beast piercing the vast space. The chamber doors burst open, Kaelith soldiers flooding in like a black tide, their armor gleaming under the glow of plasma weapons. Tarek led them, his towering form stark against the crowd, his metallic skin blazing like molten steel, his face a mask of cold resolve. "Still haven't learned, have you, Syris?" he said, his voice dripping with scorn, his icy gaze sweeping over her and Ethan. Tarek advanced, each heavy step clanging on the metal floor like a hammer strike. He raised his plasma weapon, its blue light illuminating his rigid features, sharpening his unyielding edges. "The Council doesn't just want the Echo Mark," he said, his tone low and menacing. "They'll turn the Zethra into weapons, against other worlds, including your Earth." Ethan's blood surged, rage igniting like a furnace in his chest. He clenched the stone until it vibrated fiercely, its violet light flaring brighter. "You won't touch my home," he snarled, his voice a blade, meeting Tarek's stare without fear. He turned to Lyrra, commanding sharply. "Lyrra, get up!" The Zethra roared, its fierce cry reverberating through the chamber, rising with renewed strength from Ethan's call. The remaining plasma shattered, and Lyrra charged the soldiers, its spines blazing violet red, slashing through the air like lethal razors, forcing the ranks into chaos. The exiles leapt into the fray beside them, their crude weapons, metal rods tipped with sharp crystals, clashing with plasma in explosive bursts. Rinna swung a short staff, her faint skin glow pulsing as she felled a Kaelith soldier. Koran, though aged, moved with surprising agility, plunging a crystal dagger through an enemy's armor. But Tarek stood unmoved. He fired, a blue plasma net snapping through the air like lightning, and snaring Ethan in searing tendrils. Ethan fell, the net binding him like a living trap, its energy numbing his limbs. "You're done," Tarek said, his voice triumphant, his gaze a conqueror's over a broken foe. Syris screamed, lunging with her rod. Its violet light sliced through the net, tearing the blue tendrils apart in a shrill burst. She yanked Ethan free, her hands gripping his, her skin flaring red. "Run!" she shouted, her voice urgent, pulling him toward a narrow exit in the chamber's corner. Lyrra led the way, its steps unsteady but resolute, its spines still glowing despite its weakness. They bolted through the passage, the soldiers' roars echoing behind, but the stronghold shook violently. A massive explosion erupted from within the chamber, a deafening boom raining sand and stone like a storm, sealing the path they'd fled. Ethan felt the floor quake, his breath labored as he ran with Syris, still clutching the stone. "What was that?" he yelled, his voice cutting through the blasts. Syris glanced back, her skin flickering with panic. "Someone triggered the energy core," she replied, her tone rushed. "The stronghold's collapsing." Lyrra growled, surging faster, guiding them through a smoke-filled corridor, its spines a beacon in the chaotic dark. They halted in a shadowed nook, gasping, sand coating their faces. Ethan looked back, the blast still rumbling, black smoke billowing from their escape route. Is Lyrra okay? He asked, his voice rough, hand resting on the Zethra's head. Lyrra raised its head, its gemstone eyes flickering weakly, but it stayed loyally by his side. Syris gripped his hand, her eyes blazing with resolve. We're not done, she said, her voice low but firm. Tarek won't stop. They burst into the desert, sand swirling underfoot, the stronghold behind them ablaze like a volcanic eruption. Black smoke coiled into Zelara's sky, obscuring the emerald pillars' glow, turning them into ghostly silhouettes. The stronghold's explosions echoed, mingling with the wind's howl across the empty expanse. Ethan panted, his shoulder bleeding crimson through his shredded suit. Syris ran beside him, her rod trembling, its violet light flickering like a faltering pulse. Lyrra raced ahead, its glowing spines cutting through the sandstorm, a living lighthouse guiding their path. Engines roared overhead. Kaelith warships emerged, their massive shadows slicing through the sky, their thrusters blazing like falling stars. Tarek and his soldiers pursued from behind, their black armor glinting under plasma light, their relentless steps drowning the wind. The group stopped in the desert's heart, surrounded. Sand whipped around them, stinging their skin, clogging Ethan's throat as he coughed. It's over, Tarek said, his voice cold as metal, advancing with a plasma sword in hand. Its blue blade illuminated his face, his compound eyes gleaming with ruthless intent. Ethan stood tall, each breath a knife in his chest. Not yet, he roared, clutching the glowing stone in his pocket. Before Tarek could strike, a deep growl rolled from the distance. Koran appeared, his frail form stark against the sandstorm, leading a herd of Zethra from the crystal vault. They charged like a radiant tempest, their spines blazing, their hum like shattering glass blending with the wind. They've chosen you, Koran said, his rasping voice firm, his cloudy eyes sparking with final defiance. Ethan drew a deep breath, the vibration within him flaring like wildfire. Zethra, protect us! He commanded, his voice thundering across the desert, overpowering the engines above. The herd responded, surging into the Kaelith soldiers with terrifying speed. Their spines pierced black armor, soldiers' screams mixing with plasma blasts. One Zethra leapt, toppling a soldier, its spines plunging into the sand, leaving a glowing streak. The ranks faltered, but Tarek held firm, his eyes locked on Syris. He lunged, his plasma sword slashing down like blue lightning. Syris raised her rod to block, violet clashing with blue in a shower of sparks. Stop, Tarek! She cried, her voice shaking, her arms trembling under his strength. Tarek snarled, pressing harder, the blade inches from her throat. You've betrayed family! He bellowed, his skin flaring red like blood. Syris shook her head, tears glinting in her compound eyes, but she held steady. I'm saving it, she said, her voice low but sharp as a dagger. Ethan, legs trembling from blood loss, gritted his teeth and stepped forward. Lyrra! He shouted, his voice raw. The Zethra turned, its gemstone eyes flashing, charging Tarek. But a soldier fired a plasma net from behind, blue tendrils ensnaring Lyrra. It roared, thrashing, its spines blazing but trapped. Tarek laughed coldly, facing Ethan. Think you can win? He taunted, raising his sword. Ethan lunged, unarmed, but Tarek's boots slammed him into the sand, the blow crushing his chest. Syris screamed, shoving Tarek back with a fierce strike from her rod. Enough! She roared, her skin blazing red like a furnace. She charged to Lyrra, slicing the net with her rod, sparks flying as the blue tendrils snapped. Lyrra leapt free, roaring, pinning Tarek to the sand before he could react. Its blazing spines hovered at his throat, holding him down without killing. It's over! Ethan yelled, his voice weak but resolute, pushing himself up on the sand. Sand still swirled, the engines above roaring louder. A Kaelith warship dove, weapons primed, but the Zethra herd leapt, their spines piercing its hull. An explosion ripped through the sky, debris raining like a meteor shower, forcing the other ships back. Ethan clutched his shoulder, blood seeping through his fingers into the sand. Syris rushed to him, steadying him. You okay? She asked, her voice urgent. Ethan nodded, his vision fading. Lyrra is, he whispered, gazing at the Zethra standing triumphant over Tarek. A sharp whine cut the sky, drowning the wind and blasts. An unfamiliar ship landed amid the desert, unmarked by Kaelith's symbols. Its hatch opened, and a woman stepped out, her short red hair stark against the night, her eyes as sharp as Ethan's. She wore a tight combat suit, a glowing device in hand. "I've searched the galaxy for you, Ethan," she said, her voice low but clear, striding through the sand with a warrior's poise. "I'm Mara, your sister." Ethan staggered forward, stunned, clutching his shoulder. "Sister? Rescue?" he rasped, pain and confusion slurring his words. Mara nodded, her gaze shifting to the Zethra herd. "From them," she said, pointing to Lyrra and the others. "They linked to you, sent a signal to Earth. I picked it up 3 days ago, from a planet no one expected." Ethan turned to Lyrra, the vibration within him now a song, clear and powerful. "They called you?" he whispered, touching the stone in his pocket, feeling it pulse in harmony with Lyrra. Mara stepped closer, resting a hand on his shoulder, heedless of the blood. "You didn't just survive, Ethan. You've done something greater." The remaining Kaelith soldiers retreated, their warships vanishing into Zelara's dark sky, leaving the desert still. The wind whistled through the sand, carrying smoke and dust from the ruined stronghold. Tarek lay beneath Lyrra, his skin dim, his compound eyes glaring at Syris with rage and impotence. Syris knelt by Ethan, her rod's light fading, her skin softening to pale green. "We did it," she said, her voice a near whisper. Ethan met her eyes, then Lyrra's, the vibration within him sinking with the desert's breath. "Not done," he rasped. "But we've started." Beneath Zelara's blazing sky, the emerald pillars danced across the desert, their glow mingling with the radiant spines of the Zethra herd. Ethan stood, his shoulder throbbing, dried blood crusting his torn suit, but his eyes shone, mirroring the starlit expanse above. Syris stood beside him, her rod now a cold metal husk, its violet light gone, though her shimmering skin flickered between pale green and soft gold, reflecting her tangled emotions. Mara, her red hair vivid against the dark, approached Ethan, her combat boots leaving deep prints in the sand. The Zethra encircled them, their spines humming gently, a symphony of low and high notes blending with the wind sweeping the vast plain. "The Council will return," Syris said, her voice low, her compound eyes fixed on the horizon where the Kaelith ships had fled. She clenched her fist, her skin dimming as if suppressing fear. Ethan turned to her, placing a hand on her shoulder, feeling the cool shimmer of her skin. "We'll be ready," he said, his tone firm, his gaze locking with hers in silent strength. Syris met his eyes, her compound gaze flashing, then nodded faintly, a small but weighty gesture. Koran approached from the Zethra herd, his aged form swaying on the sand, but his cloudy eyes glinted with rare hope. "The Echo Mark has returned," he said, his rasping voice like wind through stone. He raised a hand, pointing to Lyrra beside Ethan, its spines blazing like golden flames. "Zelara will change. Not by Kaelith blood, but by what you bring, Ethan Cole." He paused, drawing a deep breath, as if etching the moment into memory. "The Council can't stop it now." Mara stepped closer to Ethan, her hand resting on his shoulder, ignoring the crusted blood. "Earth needs to know this," she said, her voice low but sharp, her eyes alight with a warrior's readiness. "What you've done here isn't just survival. You've shifted a planet, maybe a galaxy." Ethan looked at his sister, the vibration within him swelling, not just from Lyrra but from Mara's words. "You mean that?" he asked, his voice rough, doubt mingling with hope. Mara nodded, her grip tightening. "I saw the Zethra's signal. No one on Earth believed it, but I did." Ethan turned, touching Lyrra. Its translucent skin was cool under his hand, its spines humming, a chime syncing with his pulse. The vibration became a melody in his mind, an ancient song he'd never heard but knew by heart. Visions flickered, the callers, tall and mysterious, standing with Zethra on Zelara, their eyes blazing like fire. Then the vision widened, other planets, other species, all bound to the callers by an unseen thread. They left a legacy, he said, his voice low, eyes distant as if seeing the cosmos ahead. Syris stepped closer, her skin softening to a golden hue for the first time since Ethan met her. She gave a faint, genuine smile, revealing a warmth she'd once concealed. And we'll carry it on, she said, her voice light as a breeze over sand. She raised a hand, brushing Ethan's on Lyrra, a simple act heavy with understanding. Ethan met her gaze, feeling the warmth of her fingertips despite her cool skin. You really believe in this? He asked, his voice quiet. Syris nodded, her compound eyes shining. I've seen you do what Kaelith never dared dream. I believe. Mara watched, her sharp eyes silent but observant. She turned to the Earth ship, its thrusters light a reminder of the task ahead. We don't just need to tell this story, she said, her voice low but resolute. We have to prove it. Earth will need allies, and Zelara's the start. Ethan nodded, releasing Lyrra to grasp Mara's hand. We'll show the universe, he said, his voice stronger despite his exhaustion. Humans don't just survive. We connect, with Zethra, with Zelara, with each other. Lyrra raised its head, its spines flaring golden, its high hum blending with the herd's chorus. Ethan felt the melody spread through him, a wordless promise. He looked skyward, where Syris's skin glow merged with the Zethra's light, painting a radiant tableau under alien stars. The emerald pillars danced across the desert, as if Zelara sang with them. Koran stood still, leaning on a glowing stone, his cloudy eyes fixed on the horizon. I've waited for this day too long, he murmured, his voice fading, as if speaking to himself. Syris released Ethan's hand, stepping to Lyrra. She touched its translucent skin, her glow merging with its spines, forming a small halo between them. I once thought Lyrra was mine alone, she said, her voice low. Now I see, it chose you, and through you, it chose us all. Ethan watched, the vibration within him no longer just a tune, but a shared pulse linking him to Lyrra, Syris, Mara, and Zelara. We're more than allies, he said, his voice rough but certain. We're one. They gazed upward, the Zethra's light and Syris's glow intertwining, spreading across the desert like a living flame. The wind carried the herd's hum, a declaration echoing among the stars. A new alliance was born, not of blood or power, but of a deep understanding between beings once strangers. Ethan stood among them, his shoulder aching but his heart light, knowing this wasn't an end, but the dawn of a greater journey, a future where humans and Zethra would rise together, facing whatever the vast universe threw their way.